What is up, NFL fans, and welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Around. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach Kevin Smith. It's Black Monday, but it's not black. It's not dreary for every team, as some teams, our Pittsburgh Steelers being one of them, are preparing for the playoffs. Coach, what's up? How's it going?
Fascinating football weekend, Jeff. Really interesting stuff. The NFL got it right. They set this thing up so there would be some big showdowns, and they got some really interesting games on Saturday night, and then that Steelers-Ravens game was an epic one on Sunday night.
Absolutely. And we're going to start the show off talking about those division deciding games. Now, not everything was decided, especially in the NFC South on Saturday, but let's start there. Carolina goes to Tampa Bay. It looks like they're playing in a monsoon at times, just absolute crazy weather. And Carolina loses this game. And I just don't know what is 16-14 final score. Weird game. It was an ugly game. Coach, what was your takeaway from that contest before we talk about how the NFC South was actually decided?
Yeah, those were two mediocre teams playing in horrendous circumstances, and it didn't make for the most visually compelling football unless you love the slop. But credit to the Carolina Panthers, first of all, for just putting themselves in position, because I think a lot of people picked them to finish last in that division. I mentioned to you before the show, the entire division wound up with a losing record. So it wasn't exactly a high bar that they had to clear to win the division, but still, Dave Canales has done a great job there in 2 seasons of taking what was arguably the worst franchise in the league when he got hired and now turning them into a playoff team. I mean, he is getting competent quarterback play out of Bryce Young. They got a recipe there. They're running the ball well. They're playing pretty good defense. Again, this is a Carolina Panthers team that gave up more points than any team in NFL history last year. And they managed in just a year to get respectable on defense. So, yeah, granted, they lose that game in the slop down there in Tampa, but they get the benefit of Atlanta winning on Sunday to hand them the division. Good for them, man. I think that they're a nice turnaround story in the 2025 season.
There are often times where I'll ask the question of, what does this say more to? Does it say more to the Carolina Panthers' success after being horrible last year, or does it say more to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tripping and falling all over themselves? I got to give it to Carolina, though. Like you said, no one thought they were even going to vie for a division crown. They end up winning it, but this is a bad look for Tampa Bay, is it not?
It is. And, we're going to talk about Black Monday in a little bit. Be very interesting to see if they falling far short of expectations. Does that cost Todd Bowles his job? Baker Mayfield's play down the stretch regressed. Certainly seems like he missed Liam Cohen this year. Liam Cohen did a phenomenal job with Baker Mayfield in Tampa and then moves on to Jacksonville, where he does a phenomenal job with Trevor Lawrence. So did his absence cost them? Really interesting conversation, which we're not going to get into now, but this should be one maybe that we have down the line. Should teams who have these longtime veteran head coaches, but beneath them have up and coming coordinators, guys like Liam Cohen, guys like Ben Johnson, guys like Mike McDonald, should they lock those guys up? Should they move the veteran head coach maybe to a different position in the organization and lock up the up-and-comers? Because in every instance of the 3 that I've mentioned, when that up-and-comers moved on somewhere else, they've had success, and then the team that they left has regressed.
That's true. That is a good talking point for the offseason. We'll hold on to that one and take a look and see how the playoffs pan out. So the NFC South is settled because, as you said, the Falcons beating the Saints gives the Carolina Panthers the division crown. So the Buccaneers, although their hope was still there after Saturday, it was squashed on Sunday. Now let's go to the nightcap on Saturday. The Seattle Seahawks go to Santa Clara, home of the San Francisco 49ers. And what a defensive performance by Seattle. And I saw a lot of people on Twitter that were showing the Baltimore Ravens with Mike McDaniel is Mike McDonald. Sorry. Yeah. When he was the defensive coordinator in Baltimore and the stats they had there, and then what he took to Seattle, this guy knows what he's doing on the defensive side of the football. They win 13-3. And it was a weird game, a lot of turnovers. But Coach, what was your takeaway from this? As the Seahawks claim the top seed, the NFC West crown, what's your takeaway from this game?
Well, let's context this by pointing out entering that game, San Francisco had won 6 in a row. And in their last 3 games, they'd scored 37, 48, and 42 points, respectively. And then Seattle holds them to 3 points, 9 first downs, and 173 total yards. It was an absolute masterclass defensively by the Seahawks. They are the least talked about number 1 seed that I can remember in a long time. I mean, maybe their counterpart in the AFC, the Denver Broncos, can rival them, right? But these are the 2 most under the radar number 1 seeds we've seen in a long time. Mike McDonald has done a phenomenal job in Seattle.
Who wants to go to Seattle? Like, that's the question. In the postseason, who is going to want to go to the Great Northwest and have to play in that stadium against this team with this defense? But let's go back to San Francisco. I've been saying it for weeks now. There's something that's just not. They're winning football games and they're putting up a lot of points, but I keep watching the 49ers and I'm like, I just don't buy it. I just don't believe it. And the numbers were there and you're kind of like, I got to convince myself into feeling a certain way. I don't. This is kind of like, for me, a little bit of validation. This is what I thought the 49ers were, and it kind of comes to fruition. Do I think the 49ers are done? No, I don't think they're done. I think they're still a very good football team, very well-coached team, and they can definitely turn it on. But this 49ers offense, like, they did not look right, and I don't know what the issue was, and I don't think it was all Seattle. Do you?
Yeah, you said it last week on the show that you took Seattle here, and you just said you didn't think that San Francisco was passing the eye test, which sometimes feels like a real thing. Sometimes it just feels like visually you project how a team is going to play against a superior opponent or an elite opponent. And when they don't look right, and I can't put my finger on it. I don't follow the 49ers enough. I know Kyle Shanahan's scheme really well, but I don't know their personnel well enough to be able to say with certitude, here's why it didn't click. But boy, again, man, you look at the numbers, they're averaging 40 points a game over the last couple of weeks. They're playing some bad defenses, bad opponents. But that just makes it even more impressive that Seattle comes into San Francisco and locks them down like that.
I'll say it again. I said it on other podcasts. I'm going to eat crow here. I was one of the guys that said when Seattle traded DK Metcalf away, when they made the move to get Sam Darnold, some of the offseason moves and decisions they made just did not make sense, at least on paper. I was wrong. Seattle, number 1 seed. They deserved it. They've played well all year. They've made multiple trips to the East Coast playing at 1:00, and they win those football games. Like I said earlier, who is going to want to go into Seattle? I don't think there's any team in the NFC that is raising their hand for that challenge. And we'll talk about the matchups and what could be coming up. But let's finish this with Sunday night. This was a memorable one, Coach. And I know we're Steeler fans, but even if you're not a fan of the Steelers or Ravens and you stayed up and watched all that game, that was a back and forth affair, a wild fourth quarter, a wild finish. And the Steelers end up winning 26-24. They win the AFC North. They punch their ticket to the number 4 seed. What's your immediate takeaway from that game?
I got text messages from friends of mine all over the country who were tuned in for that game and just remarking about what a football game and what a fourth quarter in particular. Pittsburgh enters the fourth quarter up 13-10. Baltimore scores, Pittsburgh scores, Baltimore scores, Pittsburgh scores. Baltimore goes right down the field with less than a minute to play with a chance, 2 seconds remaining to kick a 44-yard field goal and win the division. And that poor rookie kicker pushes it wide right. Kid hadn't missed a field goal under 50 yards all year long. Funny things happen in pressure situations, particularly at positions where mechanics are integral and where you are isolated. You have so much time to think about it. That's why I think about, like you're a golfer, Jeff. I think about hitting a tee shot in a big moment. You're on the 18th hole at Augusta, a chance to win the Masters, and you have to be mechanically precise with all the eyes on you. And it just felt like in that moment, Tyler Loop, the Baltimore kicker, didn't get his mechanics right. Does the pressure get to you in that situation?
Well, you left out a huge part of this whole finish, and that was the fact that someone who does typically do very well in clutch moments, Chris Boswell, misses an extra point. I mean, I'm sure you're like me. You're thinking this is just death taxes and Chris Boswell extra points is what happens. He misses. And now, instead of a 3-point lead where a field goal would have sent it to overtime, you're looking at the Ravens only needing a field goal with 3 timeouts, 55 seconds. Lamar Jackson, they've been making big plays. And then they get a return on the kickoff that gets them out to the 40. They only need a couple first downs, and they're in field goal range. We've talked about the changes in the system, and I can't believe how it shook out. I can't believe Chris Boswell missed the extra point, and I can't believe Tyler Luke booted it. It's a great story for Aaron Rodgers. It's a great story for Cam Hayward, some of the veterans, TJ Watt coming back from his lung issue. But man, what a back and forth affair. Would you say this is one of the more memorable Steelers-Ravens games, at least in regular season memory?
Well, John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin have coached 40 games against one another, which is the second most of any coaching duo in NFL history. And this is top 3 to me because of the stakes. I don't think anything's going to top the 2008 AFC Championship game, but because of the stakes, because of the drama, because of the players involved. I mean, Aaron Rodgers authors a vintage performance. He throws for a season high 294 yards. He leads the Steelers back twice in the fourth quarter when they need touchdowns, not field goals, but touchdowns to reclaim the lead. He plays his best football of the season in the biggest moment. And that's why Pittsburgh signed Aaron Rodgers to author performances like that.
Something I thought about, this was in the post-game show and in my post-game podcast. Do you think it's an advantage for a team like the Steelers, who was in a must-win situation going into the playoffs, going into a wild card round, whereas you look at who they're going to play, and we'll talk about that matchup against the Houston Texans shortly, they were able to rest players. Nico Collins didn't even dress. CJ Stroud was benched, and they get the backup Mills come in and play, and they're playing against Riley Leonard and the Colts. Do you think there's a mental edge for a team that's already been in playoff mode compared to someone that got some rest?
I think the opposite. Yeah. I mean, yes, to your point. Yes. I think the advantage lies with the Steelers.
Got it.
I think the advantage lies, because they're the ones now that will feed off the momentum. They're the ones who, like, when you win a game like that, you can't wait to get back out and play your next game. I mean, that it is infectious. It has a vibe that carries over, which isn't to say that Houston suffers for resting their players but think about the vibe of going up to Indianapolis, and that's kind of dead there because they're out of the playoffs and they're playing, they're experimenting with their rookie quarterback. There's no stakes, there's no urgency. You have to turn it back on if you're the Texans. The Steelers, it's turned on. And so I think that win, particularly in that environment, under those circumstances, benefits Pittsburgh.
It absolutely does. So let's go to the next topic, which is we're kind of leaving week 18 and now we're looking ahead to the playoffs, and the wild card round is set. I'm going to ask your take on a couple factors here, but we're going to go just chronologically. The first game is a Saturday, 4:30 p.m. kickoff. The Panthers, congratulations, you're in, and you have to host the LA Rams. This is a rematch. This is a rematch, though, and the Panthers beat the Rams in Carolina earlier this season. I'm not sure of the spread or anything like that as of now. I'll take a look at that while you're talking, Coach. But what do you think about this matchup, and do the Panthers even have a chance?
I think if you can get any kind of odds that are not ridiculous, you should bet a lot of money on the Rams. Right?
Rams are I just looked at Rams are giving 10.5 points.
Yeah, 10.5 points. I'll be interested to see what the money line odds are, because straight up, man, Carolina, can they beat the Rams twice?
That's
tough. That feels impossible, right? It feels like Sean McVay will dive into that film, figure out what happened in that first game, and have an answer.
If you want some really good return, Carolina's plus 440 on the money line if you think their upset is looming.
Yeah.
But minus 600 for the Rams on the money line. So still, it's interesting. This is a total of 46.5. I don't even see this being a high scoring affair either. But you like the Rams here, so do I. 4:30 p.m. This is kind of like to me, looking at all the matchups, this is kind of the one game that you're like, 4:30 Saturday, this is a good spot for it. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, it's like the appetizer where, you're not that hungry. The appetizers don't look that great, but you could probably, maybe you'll throw a couple cocktail weenies down your throat because you're bored or whatever. But
There you
that's
go.
not the main event, no doubt.
This is the pigs in the blanket. Next comes up the big game. It's Packers Bears. The third time we're going to see this matchup. This is going to be electric. It's in Chicago. 8 p.m. kickoff Saturday. This is on Prime Video. So if you don't have Amazon Prime, you better find a way to get a free trial or something like that. Chicago is spotting just 1.5 points. Jordan Love will be healthy. The Bears kind of limp their way into the postseason. What do you think about this game, Coach?
Well, the Packers really limped their way in. I mean,
Yes.
they have played poor football over the last month. They're without Micah Parsons. Jordan Love has been banged up. I don't like this spot for Green Bay. I think Chicago. I loved what I read on Monday. Ben Johnson publicly ripped his offense, including himself. But he talked about his players, and that's a great move on his part from a motivational standpoint. That's a coach who understands we have to be better. I think Chicago will be well prepared. I think they'll play well in front of the home crowd. I'll be surprised if Green Bay wins this.
Because Detroit beat Chicago in Week 18, and that was a game that the Bears wanted to win because you're talking about a lot of playoff seedings, all that stuff. So it's definitely a situation where you're looking at two teams that are definitely not trending in the right direction. The Packers put up 3 points in Week 18 against the Vikings, losing 16-3. This spread doesn't make sense to me, though. The Bears just giving 1.5. I don't know if it's because it's the first-year head coach. I don't know if it's a lack of playoff experience. Who knows? But this game is going to be fun. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking the Bears, man. I don't like how Green Bay is playing football. I think how you enter the playoffs often matters. And yeah, Chicago not proud of their loss on Sunday to Detroit, but I think they enter the playoffs in a much better spot than Green Bay. And being at home, I think that crowd will be lit. I mean, Chicago fans will get behind their team, no doubt.
Absolutely. So I like the Bears as well in this game. I like them to cover that 1.5 point spread. Then we go to Sunday. It's always interesting to me that there's no AFC game on Saturday. I always felt like the NFL wanted to have one from each conference on every day, but we have an all NFC slate on Saturday. Sunday, I think one of the sneaky good games that no one is probably going to talk about a ton in this wildcard round is the first game at 1:00. The Buffalo Bills have to go down to Jacksonville. There was a time where we would have laughed at this and we would have said, this is a joke, right? No, the Jaguars are 13-4 in the regular season. The Bills 12-5. Buffalo is actually giving points on the road in Jacksonville. So the Jacksonville Jaguars are home dogs. But as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, with Liam Cohen at the helm, Trevor Lawrence is a different beast. This team is playing much better. I don't know what it is about the Jaguars, but I could actually see them winning this football game. Coach, what do you think about this? The Buffalo Bills kind of rested some players as they sent Highmark Stadium off, unless they host a playoff game. I guess they would maybe have a chance, but still, what do you think about this game?
So listen to some of the teams Jacksonville has beaten this year. They beat the Texans. They won in San Francisco. They beat the Chiefs when the Chiefs were still playing really well. They throttled the Chargers 35-6. They beat the Colts when they were still playing pretty well. They beat the Broncos. That's about as impressive a resume as any team in the NFL has so far this season. I agree with you. This is a tough spot. Back in the preseason, I picked Buffalo to make it to the Super Bowl. I'm going to stick with that only because I feel like at some point Josh Allen is going to get to a Super Bowl, and this is a great year for it because it's wide open. There's no clear favorite. But I also will not be surprised if Jacksonville wins this football game because they've shown, based upon that resume I just read, that they can beat really good teams. They can beat them at home. They can beat them on the road. They can beat them in shootouts. They can beat them in low-scoring games. Jaguars are, I won't say for real, but I'll say they're pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a situation where there's certain teams. We mentioned this with Seattle because they don't get a ton of coverage, but they're a good football team. I feel the same way about the Jaguars. I don't know if it's because it's Jacksonville and Florida. Other Florida teams get more coverage, but they've been a joke for a long time. The Jacksonville Jaguars have. And you'd have to go back to those mid-2000 Blake Bortles teams with Leonard Fournette at running back, a young Jalen Ramsey in the defensive backfield to find a time where they were considered legitimate. I think this team is really good. I'm not sold on the Buffalo Bills. Their defense is not great. If the Jaguars can run the football, I can see them winning this game. I'll call it right now. I'm going to take the Jaguars getting the points at home as the home dog. What do you think?
Okay.
You're sticking with Buffalo. I know
I'm
that.
going to stick with Buffalo. That's only because I'm being stubborn because I picked them in August, The numbers probably don't back up my confidence. They have been very inconsistent, but if Josh Allen's going to create a legacy, worthy of his talent, then he's going to have to get over the AFC hump at some point. Maybe this is the beginning of the run. We've seen these improbable road runs before where a team goes on the road for 3 playoff games and gets to the Super Bowl. I don't know if Buffalo's got it in them, but I'll back them.
All right, so let's then go to the next game, which is a budding. It's not a budding rivalry. It's been a rivalry. It goes back to the NFC Championship years ago. The San Francisco 49ers have to go across country now to play the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles were able to rest a lot of their starters in Week 18, and the Philadelphia Eagles are spotting 3.5 points. This is an interesting game on a lot of facets. I have 2 teams here that, again, they don't pass the eye test for me, Coach. The Eagles have not looked right all year. Neither have the 49ers. This is an interesting game. Of your take.
This is my favorite matchup of the weekend because I just feel as though these are 2 teams that, like you said, they've underachieved at times, but at the same time, if they get their act together, man, if they play their best football, they can beat anybody in the NFL. It was interesting when I had Rob Stats Guerrera on my call sheet program back in the spring when I was previewing all 32 NFL teams. Rob covers the 49ers. And I asked him, Rob, what team do 49ers fans hate the most? And I was kind of expecting to hear Rams, maybe Seahawks. He said Philadelphia Eagles. And a lot of that stems from the recent rivalry that has developed in the playoffs between these teams. And I think that some of that will carry over. These teams don't like each other. And it's a good matchup. It's going to be a physical game. These are both physical teams. They're fast and physical on defense. They're well coached. It'll be really interesting to see how this one plays out.
Who do you like?
It's going to be a close game. I'll take Philly by a field goal at home in a low-scoring game. Hard to knock off the Super Bowl champs in their own building in the playoffs.
Philly's got to be able to run the ball. Like, that's the biggest thing. And that means Jalen Hurts, too. Use his mobility. I like the Eagles as well to win here at home. So let's go to the Sunday night game, 8 o'clock. This is on NBC. Another game that a lot of people are probably not going to talk about as much, but I think this is an intriguing matchup. The LA Chargers have to go to Foxborough to play the New England Patriots. The Chargers rested a lot of players, mainly Justin Herbert in Week 18. The Patriots did their job against Miami in Week 18. The Patriots 14-3, the Chargers 11-6. The Patriots are giving 3.5 points here. Coach, what do you think?
Well, the Patriots are the anti-Jaguars in the sense that, they've beaten no one. They have one. They got one win over the Bills, which is a nice win. But otherwise, look at their wins, man. Saints, Titans, Browns, Falcons, Bengals, Jets twice. A bunch of nobodies, man. They got one signature win, one win over the Bills. And so this will be a test as to whether or not they can win a big game against a good team. But I think this is a tough spot for the Chargers. You got to fly across the country into what's going to be a cold, nasty environment. Foxborough is a notoriously tough place to play in the playoffs. I know there's no Belichick and no Brady right now, but it's still a hard place to play. I just think this is a tough spot for LA. I like the Patriots here.
I don't know about – there's something about the Chargers that I think that they're a team that's built to maybe pull this off. If they can run the football, we know that Harbaugh wants to run the ball. If Justin Herbert is healthy and can move and his wrist isn't an issue, that's his non-throwing wrist, obviously. And if their targets are we're talking about Lad McConkey, Quentin Johnson, and Keenan Allen, obviously, I actually like the Chargers getting the points here. I think it's going to be a close game. You mentioned it. New England might look great on paper. They haven't beaten anyone. They haven't beaten anyone this year. The Chargers have had a much more difficult row to get to where they are now. I think they're tested for this. I think the Chargers, I can't believe I'm saying this. I think the Chargers are not going to charger this game away. But I think Harbaugh brings a different mojo to the team, if that makes any sense, Coach.
He does. I'll be very interested to see how well Justin Herbert plays in, 18, 20 degree weather. It's supposed to be
That's true.
cold. There's a little bit of a warm up happening along the East Coast right now, but that's supposed to peter out by next weekend, and the cold's coming back.
All right. So you like the Patriots. I'll take the Chargers. Now, I'll ask you this. We talked about it last year, I'm sure, but what do you think about a game being played in the playoffs on Monday night?
Hate it. Hate it. It's terrible. It's a terrible idea. Whoever wins that game is at a disadvantage the following weekend. They have a one less day to, no matter how you structure it, they have one less day to prepare. It's a horrible idea.
It is. And that's going to be the Texans going to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. Currently, the Houston Texans are giving 3.5 points on the road. I'm sure the Steelers and Mike Tomlin are going to lean into that underdog role. They're going to say, oh, yeah, Houston's won 9 in a row to end of the postseason. But that's okay. Coach, what do you think about this game?
It's an intriguing matchup. There's not a ton of history between these two teams. The Texans have been excellent on defense and have done enough on offense to maintain this long winning streak. I think the key for the Pittsburgh Steelers will be whether or not they can stay in this game close early. The Steelers have this habit of starting slowly and then figuring things out as the game goes and putting together solid second halves and rallying to win. But you go up against an elite defense, arguably the best defense in the NFL. I mean, you get down 14 points early, you're not coming back. I mean, the Texans know how, if they get their foot on your throat, man, to finish you off. And they will apply pressure to Aaron Rodgers. They will make him uncomfortable. They will lock you down with their talented secondary. If Pittsburgh gets behind early, it is going to be a huge struggle. The Steelers have to buck their own trend of slow starts and get out of the gate in this one.
The Texans, though, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't feel like a team that's going to run away from you. When you look at the Steelers' most recent, and that's not being literal in terms of the running game, just in general. When you look at the last 2 losses in the postseason for Pittsburgh, 2 years ago in Buffalo, last year in Baltimore, those two teams were high-powered, high-octane offenses that came out. They punched the Steelers in the mouth, and the Steelers never recovered. While I think that the Texans' defense is one of the best in the league, and it's going to be tough sledding, I don't see the Texans' offense being the offense is just going to be able to put the pedal down and just run away from it. Do you agree or disagree?
No, I agree. And when you look at Houston's 9-game win streak, 7 of those games are 1-score victories. So yeah, they do a great job of winning close ones. But you hit the nail on the head right there. The Pittsburgh Steelers have not won a postseason game since 2016. And in the majority of those games, in their last 5 games, they have trailed by 3 scores or more in the first half in every one of them.
Yeah.
If you start the game like that, if the Steelers start the game the way they have started their last 5 playoff games, they have no shot.
No, not with a defense like that. That if you're behind and you become one-dimensional, they're going to pin their ears back and they're going to rip Aaron Rodgers' head off. So, But I'm taking the Steelers, getting the points at home. What about you? Come on. Your hesitation says it all. You're not a fan. I hate you.
I mean, Jeff, you got to have some integrity about yourself, man. You got to.
No,
okay. The homer in me, of course, is taking the Steelers. The realist in me sees this as a tough matchup. Here's the thing I do like, though. The one thing I do like is, 1, Pittsburgh coming off the big win and the momentum that carries forward from that. 2, Aaron Rodgers. It's just different with him at quarterback. The Steelers' last several playoff games have been quarterbacked by Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, end of career Ben Roethlisberger, who was not playing the quarterback position nearly as well as Aaron Rodgers is right now in his end of the career moments. And I just don't know if Aaron Rodgers at quarterback will allow this team to fall into this malaise that they have in the last several postseasons.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun one. Let's go to our next topic, our last topic, and that's Black Monday. As of this being recorded, the following coaches have already been relieved of their duties during the show. Actually, Pete Carroll joins the list as he was relieved of his duties with the Las Vegas Raiders. But in Monday morning, Kevin Stefanski of the Browns was fired. Raheem Morris was fired late Sunday night. And this also comes into the Tennessee already had an opening. The New York Giants have an opening. The Cincinnati Bengals are retaining Zach Taylor, and other possible openings. Now you look at Miami, even Tampa Bay, as we mentioned earlier in the show. What do you think about these firings, Coach?
It's actually probably less firings than there are in a typical cycle. Usually you get I think last year you had 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I think the Pete Carroll firing, not surprising at all. Vegas is going to get the number 1 pick. I don't think they wanted a 75-year-old head coach to be responsible for developing a young quarterback. I'm sure they're going to take Fernando Mendoza. It'll be interesting to see what goes on in New York because Jackson Dart's an attractive piece. Cam Ward's an attractive piece in Tennessee. Will Kevin Stefanski be interested in either of those jobs? He's going to have probably several opportunities based upon these openings. It's almost comical, Cleveland moving on from him. From 2020 to 2023, Kevin Stefanski wins 2 Coach of the Year awards, takes the Browns to 2 playoffs, puts together the best 4-year stretch in terms of winning percentage that Cleveland has had since Marty Schottenheimer in the 1980s. And then the Browns saddle him with the worst quarterback situation in the league and then fire him when he can't make lemonade out of those lemons. So, I mean, it's just, it's Cleveland, man. So I think it'll be a blessing in disguise. I hope he's skipping out of that facility.
There's a lot of big names. Already there's people that are lining up interviews. A lot of these teams, a lot of these people are on playoff teams. Do you think that's a distraction, though, when you have a coach that might be an assistant or a coordinator, and they're also trying to get their team ready for the postseason, but at the same time, they're trying to get game plans ready and attend meetings? What's your take on that?
I definitely think it's a distraction. Ask Eagles fans who are still pissed at Jonathan Gannon for interviewing for the Cardinals job while the Eagles were preparing for the Super Bowl with Kansas City a couple years ago, and Gannon was the DC. I mean, I look at this is college still, but I look at what just happened with Ohio State in the national playoffs. Brian Hartline, their OC, announced before the Big Ten championship game that he was taking the South Florida job, but he was going to stay with Ohio State and coach them through the playoffs. They scored 10 points against Indiana in the Big Ten championship. They scored 14 points against Miami in the national playoffs. You can't serve 2 masters in the coaching profession. It requires a singular focus. I think these are significant distractions.
Do you think, and again, as of this being recorded, they have not been fired, but do you think that do you think that the Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel or Tampa Bay with Todd Bowles, do you think either of those coaches get fired?
I wouldn't be shocked if Tampa moves on from Bowles, only because, again, the young assistant, Liam Cohen, who moves on and has so much success, they might look at Bowles and say, we need a guy who's younger, who's got some newer ideas, who can help move Baker Mayfield forward. It'll be really interesting. I'll be a little bit more surprised with McDaniel. I think he did a nice job of salvaging their season in Miami. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with John Harbaugh, because there's a lot of, Baltimore says that they are going to bring him back. Will that be mutual? Now that Pittsburgh's made the playoffs, that may put to rest some of the talk about Mike Tomlin leaving, but there were even some reports that they could part ways. So there's always one firing or one coach moving on that shocks us. It'll be interesting to see who that is in the coming weeks.
Because I don't think we've had that yet. Out of the coaches that have been fired, none of it moved the needle. It's like, that was kind of expected. All right, well, let's finish it up. This is going to make me want to puke. Let's talk about Myles Garrett, the player profile.
Got to do it, Jeff.
You got to do it, and it's fine that he got the sack record. It's how it happened. Joe Burrow pulls a Brett Favre. He just lays down, and I don't know. I don't like it. I don't have to like it, but still, Coach, what's your take on Myles Garrett?
Yeah, well, I think it's a fair statement to say that Joe Burrow could probably have avoided that sack had he chosen to.
Yes.
23 sacks is a lot of sacks. And it's an even more impressive record when you consider how bad the Browns were, how often they were behind, and opposing offenses had the luxury of running the football to kill clock. It wasn't like they had to throw the ball 50 times a game to try to catch up and giving Garrett lots of opportunities. it's impressive because when I watching the Steelers Browns game 2 weeks ago, Pittsburgh did everything they possibly could to make sure Myles Garrett didn't get to Aaron Rodgers. Every team turned their protection towards Garrett, chipped him with running backs, chipped him with tight ends. He got the star treatment and he still delivered the record. You got to give him his kudos for that.
Yeah, I guess you have to. He's a good player. I don't have to like him, but he's a good player. With Myles Garrett, people don't realize this. With Steeler fans, it's different. Like if you don't know the history between him, the Steelers, and that goes beyond Browns, Steelers, still, nonetheless, congratulations, Myles Garrett. He's the new sack king for single season sacks. All right, Coach, it's been a great show. We've talked about it. I don't know if you want to mention anything. We've talked about possibly doing more than one of these shows a week as news comes out. It might be shorter shows. That'll be something probably in the offseason we might dive into. But in the meantime, Coach, what's coming up on the call sheet?
Yeah, if you didn't catch yesterday's show, go back and catch it. Our Monday morning game balls. It was our 1 year anniversary. We started cranking out the call sheet multiple times a week. 1 year ago on Monday, we did 225 shows in 2025. That's a lot of shows. And we're going to, hope for bigger and better things this year. So the 1 year anniversary show, that was a good one.
Yeah, go check it out wherever you get your podcast. Coach, as always, thanks for your time. We will talk next week for another NFL Whip Around. Take it easy.